I'm going to hand the floor over to Ascan Koerner, who is the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education in CLA, and he's going to say a few words about the Career Readiness Initiative.
Yes, thank you very much.
Welcome you to our first brown bag on the career readiness, and I want to thank Maggie for organizing this series and Sarah for helping organize this particular panel on career readiness and language acquisition. This is just very exciting to me to see all of you, to come to this event. And the second of all is I'm very excited about this brown bag series of talks that we have about career readiness. For those that are not familiar with the Career Readiness Initiative, we have, as a college, as part of our roadmap, career readiness, or students' readiness, or students' characteristic to be the most desirable in the state is a central theme for the College of Liberal Arts. And career readiness really is our commitment to make sure that our students fully realize the benefit of the liberal arts education and really fully fully realizing the benefit of the liberal arts education also means that they're prepared for careers, right? And we really take a very strong position on this rather than trying to take a defensive notion in the public discourse. There's a lot of criticism on the liberal arts, and it makes an argument that the liberal arts is somewhat, it's not practical, it's sort of a luxury, right? It's sort of like, why would we have a liberal arts education? And we want to come out very strongly and say you should have a liberal arts education, not only because it benefits you personally and your intellectual and moral growth, but also because it is indeed what you need to be successful in life. Successful in your personal life, successful as a citizen, as a participant in the world community, but most certainly also as a participant in the labor force, right? And so we really want to make a very strong argument that the liberal arts really leads to the development of these, what we call the core career competencies, that really lead students to be very well prepared for life after graduation and being, fruitful and involved participants in public life. And so it's very great to see this, and I'm really, really pleased about this particular series of events, because when we started kicking off career readiness 4 years ago as an idea, it was sort of a notion of we just kind of, was bundles about putting curricular plans together. But then we started talking about the Career Faculty Fellows Program, which really was the idea, let's bring faculty together to talk about how we bring career readiness into the curriculum, how they can build it into individual courses. And out of this Career Faculty Fellows Program really has developed a community that is generally concerned about how can we engage our students in discussions and in engagement with the liberal arts education. And so this brown bag series stems from one of our fellows who said, I want to be involved, I want to take ownership of the Career Readiness Initiative. I don't want to be just a passive participant. I don't just want to be recipient of information. I want to bring myself into this, and I want to put, like I said, take ownership of this. And that's really so exciting for me, that faculty really is not looking at this as this is just a initiative that the administration pushes down on us, and I think that certainly was the perception of the beginning, and maybe some people still feel that way sometimes. But I really think we have changed that significantly, and I think faculty really realize that it's not just a thing, it's not just a moral obligation that we have to talk to our students about the value of the education. We can't just kind of throw things at them and say, well, you make sense of it, and you have to figure out, you're smart enough to get into college, you're smart enough to figure out why it's important for you. It's really in a discussion that we have to have with them and engage them. Why does it matter to you? Why are you learning the things you're learning? How will you benefit from this outside the classroom, beyond your course grade? What are you taking away from this course? And this discussion, I think that faculty has really embraced that and said, this is a good discussion. It allows me to have discussion with my students, not just about these competencies on the surface, maybe the competencies on the surface, but fundamentally, deep down, what is the value of what you're doing in the classroom, right? So that the most annoying question that I get as a professor, is it on the test, or even more annoying, when they miss a class, did I miss anything important, right? Yes, they know that they're always going to miss something important. There's always what we do in class is important because it's relevant to them, it matters to them. And so see this here, the faculty comes out, take ownership and says, we want to talk about this, in this particular context about foreign language acquisition and career readiness. I think it's great. I'm so very glad for your involvement and that you're doing these things. And thank you, all of you, so much that you take your precious lunchtime to come and learn more and get involved and increase your own ability or your own involvement in your students' education. I think that's a great testament to your dedication as teachers, as educators. citizens of the college and really citizens of the state of Minnesota. So I'm very, very glad to welcome you, and thank you so much for all of your efforts.
So just give you the lay of the land, what's going to happen today. We have 3 panelists who are going to present career readiness projects, and then I'm going to provide some final remarks. We'll open the floor to questions, and then Maggie Bergeron, who's here representing career readiness, is going to talk about some upcoming things that are happening with that initiative. So let me introduce the panelists, and I'm going to introduce them in order of presentation. So the first person is Sarah Mack, and she teaches Spanish in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese Studies. Then Ginny Steinhagen, who teaches German in the Department of German, Nordic, Scandinavian, Slavic, and Dutch. Keep changing the names on us. And then Maggie Bergeron is in dance, and she's presenting on behalf of Fatima Walji, who is in the department, they have a new name, AIMS, Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. So please welcome Sarah. She'll be the first presenter.
Thank you, Kate. There is a handout at the back that I will be referring to, and some of the other presenters will be referring to as well. So if you haven't had a chance to grab that handout, it was next to the sign-in sheet. I think the title on one side is Introduction to Rate, possibly. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to share a couple of examples of how career readiness is being integrated into Spanish. I was one of the first faculty cohort members 2 years ago. I also see Ann Hoffman-Gonzalez and Luis Ramos-Garcia are 2 of my colleagues in Spanish and Portuguese studies who completed that cohort the same year. Jenny was also in that cohort. And I currently serve as a member of the Faculty Advisory Board. I originally wanted to participate in the initiative because I'm really concerned about the role that higher ed plays in supporting and maintaining systems of inequity. So, like probably a lot of you, I want all of my students to have the luxury to make choices about their futures, especially about their professional futures. This is kind of what Ascan was referring to in his introduction. And we see firsthand that some of our students come into our classrooms from a background that makes that quite easy, and some of our students really struggle with this. So I was very committed to the idea of leveling the playing field and the idea of bringing everyone up to have those kind of conversations about careers. So I loved the Career Readiness Initiative for that reason from the start. But, again, as Ascan mentioned, I was one of those that was very skeptical about the idea of linking the liberal arts to any idea of job readiness or career readiness. So I also wanted to become involved partially to make sure that the Career Readiness Initiative in our department, across departments, brings out these useful aspects of our courses and highlights competencies, but related to what we already do in our field. What are the strengths of our field as they exist now? And that is, in other words, start with disciplinary grounding. So what does our discipline, what does your discipline bring to the world, and how to communicate that, rather than changing or modifying what we do in the service of supporting something like job readiness. So what unique perspectives, knowledge, and skills underpin the work done in your field? If you're new to career readiness, I recommend thinking about that. We all have unique perspectives through our disciplines. We all have guiding principles. How does it help our students make sense of the world? And then from there, we can move to making connections between those unique perspectives, between the knowledge, the skills, to class activities, which can be translated very helpfully through a tool like RATE, which is what's described on your handout. And we can help our students translate that into an experience that they own, that they know how to talk about, so that our unique aspects of our field become visible and tangible. And our students can put that in the kind of language that even people who are unfamiliar with the benefits of a liberal arts education can understand. So to give you an idea of what the disciplinary grounding is for me and for my course, I have a sample here. These are all things, they're kind of the base that I keep on returning to. So this is where I feel my field is grounded and how that grounding contributes to an understanding of the world. So as I did my project, I kept on returning to these to align the whatever I was doing with career readiness with these things that I'm already doing and with these frameworks that are, again, this was according to what I determined was important for the field. So specific examples of what we did. Stephanie Anderson is also in our department. She completed the faculty cohort last spring, and she's teaching right now, so she wasn't able to come and share her own project, but she generously is allowing me to share a little bit of her story. Her career readiness integration happened in Spanish 1002, which is a beginning level language class. And her project was, her project was on story mapping. So some of you might be familiar with story mapping. Basically, students use a specialized GIS software, which actually is available to everyone here at the U, to produce an original multimedia text, including a map, text, images. Oh, and you can also use video, although her students didn't. And then her students presented the project in a in-class showcase format. So if you're not familiar with story mapping, this is kind of what the basic page looks like. So this is a student-created project, and so students would present this. It's interactive, as you can see. Students selected the text, or they wrote the text and selected the locations on the map that they wanted to feature, and selected the images as well. So this is a student-produced project, or multimedia text. Okay. So then what Stephanie did was to build in the career readiness element is after that project showcase, the learners reflected via a rate assignment which was completed in class, and she let them focus on one of three possible competencies: oral and written communication, digital literacy, or analytical and critical thinking. So the rate then gave them a framework to reflect what did they do in this project, and where does that project fit in terms of these, whatever competency they picked. And it's kind of the question of how can I talk about this in a way that is more than, wow, what a fun project, what cool photos, right? How do we get from there to what happened in this class project, and how do I put that into a language that shows how it translates into a knowledge or a skill that I can successfully apply outside the classroom. If you haven't experienced RATE before, you can try it out on your own, and I think once you do it, if you do it once, you'll see how the tool really builds that in. And I asked Stephanie to share, give me, I said, what's one top tip for integrating? And what she said was students are very engaged when they complete RATE as part of the class period. So she had her students do it in the computer lab. So her top tip was, even though students can do RATE alone at home, she feels it's worth it to make time on your syllabus for a shared in-class experience of RATE. The other example I'm going to share today is from the class that I teach, which is Spanish 1004. And Spanish 1004 is the last course in the CLA language requirement sequence. And I'm going to return here back to the idea of disciplinary grounding, because actually in the case of this class, we have a case of interdisciplinary needs and interdisciplinary connections, because most students who are taking the class are doing it just to do the requirement, or they're planning to minor in Spanish to complement another major. So we have really a clear need for interdisciplinarity, or an interdisciplinary approach. So in thinking about this in terms of my project, to get even more specific about where we're grounded, or where I was grounded at the course level, I started thinking about these needs and taking all of this into account, all that disciplinary grounding I showed earlier, and then overlaying that with the reality of this class, which is that it's a class of non-majors, non-minors. And I came up with some phrasing to capture kind of that secondary aspect that was in something that the students could understand, and came up with, as learners of language and culture in a pluralistic world, a central goal is to develop the skill of how to figure out, or how to navigate, that is the foundation of successful communication across languages, across cultures, and across disciplinary boundaries. So taking that as a point of departure, I decided to bring career readiness into the course in a meta way. So to look at global or intercultural perspectives of career readiness, and to build an awareness of the idea of what it means to be career ready. Even the idea of what a career is culturally embedded. And by looking at career readiness texts across cultures, we can use that not just to look at how the Spanish language works to communicate meaning, but we can also get a window into the different culture And then, of course, we can use that, bring it back to understand our own cultural values and our own understandings of careers as well. So I'm going to show just a quick example of that. We have activities in the class that are pretty traditional, and we do have versions of the Career Readiness Wheel, which probably many of you have seen before. We have a version in Spanish that we work with, and we do chapter activities where students reflect on their own fields or interests, which again are likely in a different major. So that's something that we are already doing in class. And then we also layer in intercultural perspectives of career readiness. And I just have one example of that today. One source of that is the Instagram account for the University of San Andres, is a university in Argentina. So they have a whole Instagram account with lovely, beautiful pictures. This is a advertisement for like a job fair kind of thing. And so students can look at this and compare the materials we have here, the materials in Argentina. What are the intercultural messages here? How does language work to create meaning in both of these cases? So to summarize where we are in Spanish 1004 with the career readiness integration, right now we have in the first week of the semester a first rate rate on analytical and critical thinking. And this is our umbrella category of our umbrella competency for the course. So I call it the set the stage rate. So this really supports people who are new to rate and the students who come with less experience thinking and talking about careers. At this point, they don't have an experience from class to reflect on, but they can see the structure of rate, and it kind of guides them through. Be aware that these are the kinds of things we're going to be thinking about as we do class activities this whole semester. In week 4, we do rate on engaging diversity, which is a different competency. And that is directly tied to this updated chapter that we move into, weeks 4 through 7. And that's the one where I was showing a couple example texts from there. It's an existing chapter theme on jobs and careers, but we have new intercultural texts, activities, and assessments. And this was partially developed in conjunction with Mandy Menke, who's the Director of Language Programs, because it's also informed by an internationalized teaching and learning approach, framework. Week 7, we go back. So just 3 weeks later, they do another rate on the same competency to reflect on these activities that we just did in the chapter. And at this time, they have they have something to apply the framework to. And then week 14, we come back again to the umbrella competency, the analytical and critical thinking, and they do a course final rate. So that's what the semester progression looks like for us in Spanish 1004. In closing, I wanted to point out or add a few best practices or tips. As I already talked about, the idea of keeping your disciplinary grounding at the center. The last thing we want is a homogenized version of career readiness across the college where all our disciplines just kind of are watered down to support this. We want our disciplines to be very strong and very robust and have career readiness support that. Also be aware of diverse student needs and experiences with the world of careers and professions. Career Services in CLA has an amazing team, and they have a lot of resources that can help if you're interested in doing this. Also, the Career Readiness Initiative team themselves are a great resource. And finally, align integration with your own philosophy of teaching and learning. We all do best for our students when we feel that we're being ourselves in our classrooms. So the more that you can align this with what you do already, the stronger result you'll have. So I do want to say I have a special thanks slide that I'll just put up here for a few moments. But with that, I'll conclude and turn it over to Ginny.
Okay, thank you very much. So, the impetus for me being involved in this program came from the very first workshop that I attended, just an informational workshop on this new career readiness initiative. The workshop was entitled Advocating for the Liberal Arts, How to Use the Core Career Competencies to Help Students Connect Your Course to Their Future. And when I was sitting in that first meeting, it really resonated with me personally. I'm a first-generation college student. I went to college as a business major, and 3 days later I decided I didn't want to be a business major, and I became a history major. And my parents spent the next 4 years saying, what are you going to do with a major in history? So I understand this concern about liberal arts. I have 3 children. I let my 3 children choose their own careers without too much input from me. But my son, who majored in communication, got that same question. What are you going to do with it? My son in engineering and my daughter in education did not get that. When someone's in engineering, it's what kind of engineering? That's what people want to know. Mechanical? We're good. Education? What grade do you want to teach? What topic? And we're good. We fit in those boxes, whereas liberal arts majors don't fit as well in those boxes. So I was sitting in this meeting and I had that personal connection to what they were saying, and I thought about me as a teacher in 1004, the 4th semester German course. So I answered the question, what are you going to do with a major in history? Initially, I won a Fulbright and spent a year in Germany. My parents were happy with that. I thought about me as a teacher. I think I'm very good at opening those doors for students. I am always encouraging my students, think about study abroad, think about these scholarships. So I'm doing a good job with those students who are in 1004 and wanting to go on to be majors or minors. But what about the students who are filling their language requirement? I'm the 1004 coordinator. I have that mix in my class all the time. And a lot of them are seniors in their 2nd semester. So what I'm doing for them is helping them graduate. And I work very hard at that as well. But I hadn't thought about connecting, talking to them about the value of this course. I talked to them about hard work and let's get through and we've got graduation as a goal. But I didn't talk to them about what are they getting out of learning a language if they're not going beyond the 4th semester. And I thought that would be a good thing to do. So my project is very pragmatic and based on that. It has 3 main elements. We focus on the competencies. We research, scholarship, internships, program study abroad, no matter what your major is, what you can do with some knowledge of German. And we integrate the linguistic piece because intermediate level speakers, I want them to get beyond these little simple sentences. I want them to begin to really work on coherent paragraphs. So those are the things that we do. So we also have the career readiness, the Kernkompetenzen in German. And we begin by showing this in class, by working what can we understand and talking about those and beginning to talk about what do we do in German classes that helps us develop these various competencies. Then the students complete a rate. They complete it in English, and then we discuss it in class, and luckily it works very well with the alliteration. Reflect, articulate, translate, and evaluate becomes Reflexion, Artikulation, Transfer, und Evaluation. So then we're talking about what skills we have and what we can do with it. Then students research these scholarships. In German, there's Fulbright, there's DAAD, and there's lots of other programs at the U, like the Center for German and European Studies has a wonderful work art internship for art students where they can actually work in a German art gallery or something like that. And our department has great scholarships. So students have to find a scholarship, an internship, or a study abroad program that would be interesting to them. So the other impetus in me doing this program was a career readiness faculty lecture that I attended in December of 2017. The presenter was Philip Gardner, who's director of the Collegiate Employment Research Institute at Michigan State University. He talked about students coming out of the liberal arts and trying to get that first job. And he said the big goal is getting them past the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are the people who ask that question, what are you going to do with a major in X? You have to show them concretely what skills you have so that they initially let you get to that interview. And then when you're in that interview, you have to have specific examples of the skills you have. It's not enough to say, I have good communication skills. How do you show that? What specific example do you have? And He also has research that shows once those liberal arts majors get the job, they tend to do very well because of those skills. So our goal is to help them articulate it. And that also really resonated with me because people say, I have good communication skills. What does that mean? And if you have a specific example, then you stick in their mind more. So I wanted my students to do that as well. So German 1004, I'm working with intermediate level speakers. The big thing we talk about is creating with the language. So first year, we just give those facts back. What's your name? My name is. Where do you come from? I come from. Now we want to expand. We want more complex sentences. We want coherency. So what we do, my students practice putting together this little kind of a speech as if you were applying for a Fulbright or one of those scholarships. And when you apply for a scholarship like that, generally the interview is in English, but there frequently is a part where they switch to German. So talk about yourself in German. You're practicing as if you're doing that. So I have them prepare it at home, practice with partners so that they get some feedback, and then they record themselves using Flipgrid. And then as an after that part of the whole assignment, they watch several other students' videos, and then they ask follow-up questions, because that's another big thing at this level, that we keep the conversation going. It's not just non sequitur, non sequitur. We actually want to talk about what we're interested in and answer follow-up questions. So that is the scope of mine. It's not a huge project. We do it maybe in a week, maybe a little over a week, but it's a short-term project. At this point in time, 17 different sections of German 1004 have done it, so about 300 students have done it. I think it has a real benefit. Students are aware of scholarship and internship opportunities, all students. I have a lot of freshmen in my class who are starting at German 1004, so this is their first class at the University of Minnesota. If they, as freshmen, get that seed, I could go for a Fulbright later. They have time to act on it. So it's good for them to become aware of everything that's available to them if they go on. But those students who are just fulfilling their language requirement are also thinking about the value of learning a language and how it applies to their career. And I think that's also a good benefit. It is a small-scale project put into our curriculum, but in another way that makes it sustainable. It has an advantage in the sense that my colleagues are willing to do it in their sections. It's not asking you to change your entire course. We're putting this one piece into your course. And I think my colleagues have embraced it. I've had good conversations with them. And of course, I developed it, which always makes it kind of awkward that, here, I hope you really like it. But they have said things like, I think we should move the order around like this, and I think we should add something where we have them read. I think you should go look at German university websites and see what a major in this major would look like there. So they're adding to it, they're buying into it, which is also a very positive thing. So that's a brief overview of my project. Our department has embraced the career readiness. I want to talk very briefly about a couple other projects that are going on. Beth Coates was a fellow last spring, and she created a project as part of her short-term study abroad course that she's going to do this coming spring. She's leading a group to Germany to study sustainability in Germany in recreation, education, and innovation. And her project is a multimodal project where students are creating a type of e-book. They'll be taking photos and videos while they're in Germany. They'll be doing cultural comparisons between Germany and the United States and reflecting on that. So that's her project for this. And the other thing that we did in the department, last spring we did a career readiness event. We applied for a small a grant from the Career Readiness Initiative, and we did this event. It had an interactive career fair format. Students met with professionals who studied the languages we teach in GNSD. So we had 10 different people who spoke German or Finnish or Swedish or et cetera, and they were around in this big hall, and students could come and ask them questions about how they use their language in their careers, and that was a very successful event. So I think the whole Career Readiness Initiative has really enriched our curriculum and our department, and we're very happy that we got involved in it. And like Sarah, I think we should be grateful to the people who helped us. So I am thankful for the Career Readiness Initiative who supported our projects, gave us a chance to do this, to my Career Readiness Fellows who gave me lots of feedback on my project, my colleagues in GNSD who are making it work because they're also getting involved in this, and to all of you. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Maggie Bergeron, and like Kate said, I am a lecturer over in dance, and here I am in front of all of you. Hello. And I'm only here because Fatima Walji is on leave, and so I was in the Career Readiness faculty cohort with her last fall. And so I'm going to speak to her project a bit just because I was a part of that experience. So here we go. So Fatima spoke to an assignment that she offered her students called this flip grid assignment, where she had this sort of vague, like she liked the technology, it was really interesting, but it was kind of vague the way that she talked about it. The syllabus wasn't very clear. The reason or the goals for doing it weren't super underlined or impactful in the syllabus, in the wording of the assignments, and the rubric wasn't clear either. So she realized as she, and I have to back up a little bit and say, one of the things that we do in the career readiness cohort is look at an assignment. I don't know if any of us have said that, and that's like a big part of that cohort experience, is pulling out an assignment or a project from your class and workshopping it with other people from various disciplines. And I think that's a real value to the cohort and why I can sort of speak to this, but also it just feels like that context is important in your understanding, like why we're all up here talking about projects, and that's really where that comes from. But as Fatima was looking at this assignment, she realized that the simple W questions were not answered. She didn't say who could be involved in this flip grid assignment. She didn't say when it was due. And she spoke, I like this, that the deadlines were too weak and not enforced because of the newness of the technology. So as an instructor, as you're wrestling with new technology, how you sort of work with that and move through that in your assignments is really important, and you can work through that in the cohort. And then she also said the prompts were too vague and assumed that students had a good understanding of both the assignments and the technology. And it turns out that our students need to be walked through the technology a lot of time too, right? So she went to this reasoning. So her idea was like, how can I adjust this assignment? Why is this relevant to Korean class? How is this assignment going to help me in my Korean class or in any other way? And what should I gain through this assignment? And that sort of explicit metacognitive framing of the assignment seemed really important to Fatima. And then she said her rubric also was not very detailed and the expectations were not outlined. So she took the opportunity of being in the cohort to work on this assignment. Goals. So her goal was to give students opportunities for daily Korean usage with a focus on oral skills, and to use technology, the Flipgrid app, in the process, and to look at the 5 C's. And I learned all about the 5 C's. It's like 5, okay, great. So communication. So through this Flipgrid assignment, she's looking at interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational communication, practices and products, knowledge and viewpoints, language and culture, and thinking beyond the school setting and creating lifelong learners. And that's really where career readiness plugs in a really beautiful way. So then she made some revisions. What? And these are so many words. But basically, she took this big assignment and broke it down really clearly into 3 parts, right? And being so explicit with the languaging of it, and she found that that really helped the students. And she speaks to, this is the Flipgrid, you're gonna upload it. I'll give you a sample, so modeling for students in a big way. And then rate. So we've spoken about rate a little bit already. And then, how do I do it? And then she speaks to explicitly how students can get Flipgrid on their phone, how it works, what are the steps. I think that it's easy to assume that our students just, technology, got it. But it really can be one of those gatekeepers, actually. So speaking through it is really important for them. And then she created this rubric. How are you graded? And it's really specific. And yeah. I will also make sure you know where to find this online as well, because this lives online. So I'm not going to spend all the time in the world going through all of this. And then speaking to rate, saying we will do 3 rate assignments. They're on Canvas. What is rate? When you use rate in your classes, I think it's really important to talk about what it is, how it works, how you're thinking about it. It's a tool that's really specific, but also really transferable from experience to experience, from class to class. I think there's some strength in it through that. And then why are we doing this assignment? That's a really cool thing to talk about for students. And this speaks also to the core career competencies. So Fatima speaks to oral and written communication, digital literacy, and teamwork and leadership. So she explicitly lays that out in the assignment. Then Fatima also shifted her syllabus a little bit in including the 5 C's. So instead of this like assessment language that lives outside of the student's purview, she put it in the syllabus so it's really clear. So there they are. Previously, her syllabus only detailed the communication aspect from the 5 C's, and then she dug into the rest of the 5 C's, so she put this in her syllabus. And she also found some like similarities between the 5 C's and the CLA's core career competencies that she spoke to much more eloquently than I could right now. But she found a connection there. And then, this is so small you can't even see it, but it's a change in the syllabus to include career readiness competencies. So she explicitly spoke to each of them, or the 2 that she really focuses on, oral and written communication and digital literacy in the syllabus. Then, one of the texts that we use in the career readiness cohorts is How Learning Works by Susan Ambrose. And so she also spoke to how students develop mastery. She found a big connection between the text that we used and working with her class. Speaking to student motivation through diverse assignments, and she used that in influencing this project, and giving students opportunities for reflection, and she found that through rate in this assignment. And then just a couple of examples from rates that students did, and I am going to read this. I developed the ability to communicate with someone only using another language under duress. The challenges of this including not being able to use my native language to communicate and having to figure out ways around words or phrases I either didn't know how to say or didn't understand. I learned that I am better than expected at orally communicating in Korean. It went surprisingly well, and I was able to effectively communicate in another language without detrimental errors. Just getting students to say those things and giving them an opportunity to like work through that is really powerful, I think. And there are a whole bunch more in the project, and again, I'll give you lots of lovely links and connections to where you can find that. And then this also I love. Discussing with my classmates and working greatly improved my teamwork ability. For example, the final project, we will discuss the script together and study the plot. There are a lot of ideas for everyone. We will discuss which one is the best and then translate it into Korean together. Constant communication is a good way to improve teamwork. Yay, right? So, some real tangible takeaways from this. Yeah, and I think that's all. I'll wrap up so we can move on.
So I just want to quickly thank all of our presenters for these great projects. Hopefully they're inspiring you. I am going to really pare down my final remarks because I want to make sure there's enough time for Q&A, but there's a couple of points that I just want to make. Sarah had asked me to kind of talk about why career readiness is important for what we do as language teachers or teachers of culture and literature. When I say language, I mean everybody. And we can all kind of cite a long list of reasons why language study is important. Students develop empathy, intercultural awareness, communicative competence, but rarely do we talk about job preparedness as something that we're doing to help our students beyond, oh, you could become a teacher or a translator or interpreter. And I think that because there's so much compelling evidence now that language proficiency is a highly desirable job skill, it's really important for us to be thinking about making these things explicit to our students so that they really understand the value of language study. ACTFL has just recently released a study that says that 9 out of 10 employers desire employees who have languages other than English, and a third of those 9 out of 10 say that that's an extremely important skill for people to have. So we're in a position to be able to promote what we do in really important ways to our students, and I think career readiness enables us to do that in a very systematic way. The other thing that I want to say is that I really liked Sarah's beginning to frame this about talking about grounding career readiness in the disciplines. Doing this doesn't mean that we have to reinvent the wheel or we have to compromise what we believe in as language teachers. Rather, the framework fits with what we're already doing. I'm thinking specifically about multiliteracies because that's what I like. But if we think about proficiency models, if we think about tools like Flipgrid and other technologies that we use to enhance language learning, those all fit within the career readiness model, and we can use those to benefit our students even more than we already do with this framework that sort of makes it intentional and deliberate for us. I think I'm just going to stop there and open things up to questions so that we have 5 minutes, and then Maggie can make some final announcements before we end. So please, we welcome your questions. I have a question. Sarah, can you talk a little bit more about how you mapped one of your disciplinary frameworks, or how career readiness mapped on one of your disciplinary frameworks? Is that a two-part question?
It's a complicated question. I would say that, the easiest answer there is we've been engaged for probably the last 3 or 4 years in our department in discussions about how a multiliteracies pedagogy can really enhance what we do. So the idea of picking those intercultural texts and the idea of placing those texts at the center of an activity, and then helping our learners to be able to use those texts as a way to experience the culture and the language and how that meaning is created through all the rich elements of the text, I would say is really important. One thing that I didn't talk about in my presentation is the idea of available designs, which is an important part of a multiliteracies framework. And the reason why we selected the text we did from the Instagram account is because those texts are made for students. They're made for students at Argentinian University, but they have the same target, right, as there's a lot of, they're like not exactly comparable groups. But the whole idea of like communication for that generation here in the United States via Instagram, we can look at the communication for that same generation in Argentina. What are the similarities and differences that they see through that social media platform? I think that would be kind of one of the areas where I really tried to integrate that idea of multiliteracies in the selection of texts.
With the wheel that you all put on there, there's a lot of different competencies, and so I'm wondering, how you chose or selected different competencies. Did you use all of them? I mean, it sounds like maybe not, but it just feels like a little bit overwhelming, a lot, right? So how did you approach that? Any tips?
So I let my students choose. And the oral and written communication came up as a very common one. I think of language, you think of that. They also talked about digital competency, engaging diversity because of various chapters and things we do. So people could really choose. Someone picked solving problems just and had specific examples. So it really, in my case, it was really open to this, whatever they wanted to do.
Do you want to add something right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. In our case, we had 4 years ago, we started looking at our internationalizing teaching and learning curriculum. And so part of what came out of that was the idea of throughout the whole course, we are really intentionally they're building in opportunities for our students to engage in analytical and critical thinking, specifically the idea of different perspectives. So the idea of recognizing multiple valid perspectives of the world. So that is where we got our umbrella category for that. And then for the engaging diversity for the chapter itself, it actually went along with the curriculum that already existed. We had a chapter, the chapter preceding that chapter is on, we used to call it the diversity chapter. So we build up to that anyway with our existing curriculum, and then we integrated that more deeply into the chapter on jobs and careers. So it was really a curricular, it kind of came out of what we were already doing with our curriculum. So.
And I was just going to add, I'm Katie Lee, I'm the faculty director of the faculty engagement piece for career readiness, that how we try to talk to people about it. Students are working their way through that wheel with the breadth and depth of their curricular and professional experiences as undergrads. So in any given course, you really want to think about focusing on one or two. And there's some cases where programmatically, or like on your first year writing, we share courses about people. So we want to choose and how we come together. But it also is everybody across those sections do what Jenny did, which is have, across sections, one or two students in different sections saying is standing out for them, even as you're doing a rate or doing assessment around a shared outcome. So I think there's a lot of different, not to feel overwhelmed by it, but to think there's different ways to approach it, given the context that you have and what you either want to invite or explore with your students in your program. So we can do one more question.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that and to see your opinion on like how to balance some kind of hard language skills, like in terms of grammar, like accuracy, like the range of vocabulary, like the accurate use of language and interpretation of language, and kind of soft language skills, like kind of cross-cultural understanding, in which the student may not be the most accurate, right, in terms of language use. But rather, you create these motivations and cross-cultural understandings. And, because in my courses, I think it's always kind of a struggle, like what's the kind of a hard skill I want the students to develop, and what's the kind of soft skill I want them to develop, which is more important. So in defining the assessment outcome of teaching, yeah.
Focused more on their coherency and their argument, because I think if they're in that interview, do they say something that'll stick in the mind of the interviewer? Do they have concrete things? I'm not doing little grammar mistakes. More, when I'm listening to them, I went back and did more pronunciation things because some things weren't clear. But I didn't really grade off. I just kind of, we're going to work on this because these sentences were hard to understand. Let's work on them. And I just approached it that way.
I think the first thing that comes to mind, one idea might be to, again, going back to the text as a cultural product, say, what language do you teach?
Like Chinese, but I
Chinese.
more content-based approach.
Yeah, so imagine going to from a Chinese university that maybe has a career readiness program. You could get text from their website, maybe, if it exists, and then give the students the support to experience the cultural differences between that. But then have a task at the end where they have to produce in Chinese their own text. And so maybe a text for Chinese learners here in the United States. What kind of language would you use? What kind of vocabulary? And then try to do it for native speakers of Chinese in China, in the more of a monolingual culture. I think you could do something like that where the students are both integrating what they know about the differences in the cultures, but also holding them to a very high standard of the grammar and the vocabulary, and then also looking at what choices about grammar or vocabulary do you make depending on who your audience is. So I think that could be something that might be a way to combine those.
Okay, thanks everybody. We're going to let Maggie just say a few words about career readiness, and then you're welcome to enjoy snacks and beverages in the back of the room. So.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you, Ginny, and thank you, Sarah. Just quickly, if this was interesting to you, we will have another Career Readiness Brown Bag Lunch focusing on the rate tool on October 29th from 12:30 to 1:30 in Anderson 110. If you go to the CLA neighborhood, you can find career readiness there, and there's an events page and a brown bag lunch page, and there'll be an RSVP there. So please come if you can, spread the word. Also, put in your calendars May 6th, it's so far away, but we're going to have a college-wide day of teaching and learning where we'll have a whole bunch of fantastic conversations about what it means to teach, to support the learners in our classrooms, as well as their growth and development moving into careers. Is there anything else? I think that's all. Yeah.
So I mentioned at the beginning that this is the first of our collaborations with the Career Readiness Initiative. We're thinking about additional activities, and Maggie's going to be sending around a survey to everybody who attended today. So if you could please give us some feedback. We're specifically thinking about a workshop related to career readiness and the languages in the spring. So if you have ideas for that, please respond to the survey because we'll be sharing the results between CARLA and career readiness.
And
yeah.
make sure you're signed up.
Yeah, you
You're
can
signed
sign
so
in
that
there
we can
and give your email address. So thank you so much for attending. Yeah.